Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Flawedcast. This is part 2. They're still living, we're still sleeping.
Flawedcast. Flawedcast. Get in the arena.
Woo! America.
Dun, dun, dun. Willie Will.
All right, we are back, and we still have Carl back in black.
The cup of coffee that you brought me was good for 2 shows.
Nah, mine wasn't.
Yeah, mine wasn't either.
Bill didn't tell me we were doing 2 shows.
Well, we had so much information, we had to basically
I would have brought
condense it
2
down.
coffees each then, man.
I don't have that much cash to give you right now. Do you have the scanner for my wrist?
I do. Hold on. Let me pull the scanner out for your wrist.
The convenient Bill Gates.
Give me all your money.
There you go. But once again, we want to thank Carl for sitting in, and his contribution last time was awesome, and we're going to get into finishing this episode. So I hope you guys were able to understand, digest. We threw a lot at you, and hopefully we're going to come full circle, give you not just a history of all these globalists, New World Order organizations, but kind of the forecast of where that's going. But before, make sure you subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Make sure you hit the bell. Flawedcast, CLE, Flawed Inc., Flawedcast. We currently are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Parler, and Gab, Flawed Inc., flawedinc.com, info@flawedinc.com. As our tradition, we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. And then, after that, though, I have a sound off because I am fired up about something. So.
Okay, so ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think if Trump doesn't get elected, which I do believe there's a good chance he's not going to get elected.
We know how you feel.
Yes. Once Biden starts rounding up everybody.
Well, Biden's not going to do it.
That's going to get us disappeared. No, it's going to be President Harris, which they've already started saying. But anyway, Jason, sound off, brother.
All right, listen, I've really been wanting to say this because I've really been upset. And I'm sorry, Bill. I know that you say I got to tone things down.
We're trying to keep it PG-13.
I'm sorry. I just got to. What I wanted to say is, and from there, what I'm saying is, and I don't know, that's all I got.
Well, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, he's really fired up today.
He's madder than a Baptist in a brothel. So anyway, like we said, we're going to try to put this all together. Thank you for listening to the last one. It's going to pay off here. Just to briefly readdress everything, we talked about a lot of organizations that were created within the last century that all serve to function as a non-governmental means to corral us into, I'll say, these ghettos, if you will, of compliance in every aspect of our lives, from money to policy to military to health
Masks.
to media to masks. Yeah. The COVID.
Don't be a mask hole.
I am not. I refuse. If you hadn't listened, please go back. Talk about the United Nations, the European Union, the World Trade Organization, the IMF, the Federal Reserve, Bohemian Grove, Club of Rome, Trilateral Commission, NATO, all these groups that were basically formed around these horrific events in world history, World War I, World War II, the last couple wars, proxy wars or wars.
And they all spin off each other.
They all do. And they're all incestual. They're all interwoven. And it basically boils down to the UN. The last thing we discussed was a Strong City Initiative, which if you are a red-blooded American, you love this country, love God, love what's right. If you have not heard of the Strong City Initiative, that should scare the living hell out of you, because this is what is allowing the subversion of the American policies and the American traditions for the UN to integrate itself into policymaking and eventually, I think, law enforcement in our country. But nonetheless, as we are being controlled, we talked about monetary control, we talked about political health control. We're not going to start to get into the idea of media control. We're going to start talking about, Operation Mockingbird, which is something we talk about a lot.
Can we just step back for 1 second?
Yeah.
The cities initiative.
Strong City Initiative?
Yeah. So is it coincidence? I know it's coincidence that the UN has popped up on American soil and we have local governments defunding the police.
Well, it's funny because now that as we are recording this, the whole fiasco with Newt Gingrich not being able to say Soros's name on Fox News, this is like a big thing. I think it's going to end up blowing up in Fox and hopefully exposed for the cow-towing shell of a beep, 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 beep that they claim to be, and the idea that the name that shall not be mentioned, George Soros is like the Rockefellers, the Morgans, these people that we've talked about in the previous episode. It's no coincidence at all.
No, it's not.
And when I first became a Christian, I had someone tell me once that when America falls, when America loses its rights to own and bear arms, and when the American dollar becomes worthless, that's when the Antichrist is going to rise. Now, I can't verify that. It makes logical sense to me. And we're going to start to get into a little bit of that. So in regards to the media organizations, there's primarily 6 that own or that control 90% of the media. And when I say media, I mean news, music, television, movie, sports, books, a lot of podcasts. We are independent. You can tell by the high quality. So any kind of entertainment that we absorb, the people we're going to read about, the organizations that we're going to discuss, they control 90%. They control the lion's share. Now, of these 6, 2/3 have ties to China, which we are in a proxy war with China. We're in an economic war. We're in a cultural war. I would even say China, a spiritual war. So, Jason.
Media outlets. So we have National Amusements, worth about $43 billion.
Billion?
Billion with a B. That's run by Summer Redstone, who's worth, I don't know, $4.6 billion. We have Disney. Disney owns, for those of you that don't know, everything.
Just about.
And they're worth about $88 billion, run by Bob Iger. We got Time Warner, $60+ billion, run by Jeff Books. Comcast, about $143 billion, run by Brian Roberts. News Corp, worth about $56 billion, run by the one and only Rupert Murdoch. Viacom, Sony, $34 billion.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't
pronounce his name either, but
I mean, that's a lot of billions.
It is. I mean, you combine the stuff, we're looking at trillions in that value. And I didn't have the opportunity to list. And I'm like, just Disney alone. You got Marvel, you got Fox, you got all of these different things. And it's with
they own ABC.
Right.
They own
with National Amusement.
ESPN.
Like National Amusement. They own a lot of sport leagues. You know, so it's not necessarily movies or TV, like any entertainment type thing.
You wonder why you watch some of these sports and some of the things and why these athletes, if you will, are kowtowing. Maybe not kowtowing, but they're forcing things to be done. You have to do this. You have to do that.
I have an idea. You brought up sports. Maybe someone should notify the NBA that they should try and expand into China, because if they did that, maybe they would be able to add value to their league. I don't know if they've thought about that, but
that's actually very smart.
Yeah, they might want to think about integrating their talent level into China and tapping into that revenue stream if someone could get the message to them.
Yeah, that might be possible, because I do know that they definitely supported the Chinese government when Taiwan, or where am I saying? Hong Kong.
Jason's a sport guy. I can speak to the politics and everything else, but Jason's a sport guy. But you and I talked about this the other day. Was it opening day in NFL? Viewership was down 28% from an already down 40%
of last year.
So within a year, down 68%. Oh. Jason's a little bitter about it, and I don't blame him, because he's the athlete of the group here, and he, ever since I've known Jason, has been
retired athlete.
Well, you have more trophies and stuff than I ever did, but nonetheless, like, you know, it's like a sacrifice he's making, because him not engaging in this stuff, because you believe in the principles of what we're trying to do and talk about.
I don't want to totally BS. I may have watched the Browns
live. Oh boy, it didn't take him very long to fall.
We need to have one
wagon.
of those. Where's one of those? You know.
Damn, bro.
He fell off the wagon in week 1.
Put him out of his misery.
Jason no longer on the wagon.
No longer anywhere.
GG Jason here. But anyway, so it's important to realize not only are these non-governmental agencies making decisions on our policy, on trade, on health, but now we have the media, which 90% of all media is owned by these 6 companies. Over 2/3 of these companies have direct ties and are influenced directly by China. So what we are seeing is an absolute inundation on a global scale of things and people and manipulative sources that are purposefully lying and dumbing down the sheeple, as we would like to call it, and which something that we say all the time, and Carl brought it up last episode in regards to academia. People are being taught what to think, not how to think. And that is the problem. Maybe it was boring to listen to the last episode because we were just spouting on history and facts and dates, but it is important to know that if you care about your freedom, if you don't care about your freedom, then don't listen. That's fine. We're not offended. But if you care about freedom, I'm talking freedom in a holistic sense, your your spiritual freedom, your economic freedom, your educational freedom, your freedom to be able to walk down the street with your dog on a beautiful afternoon. That's not hyperbole or anything. That's the fact. And this is the fight that we find ourselves currently in. So we're going to get into some quotes. And, we talk about one world order. We talk about world government. Every president since Reagan has had a quote about ushering in a one world government, one world order. We're going to get into some of these quotes. So Jason, if you don't mind.
When the struggle seems to be drifting definitely towards a world social democracy, there may still be very great delays and disappointments before it becomes an efficient and beneficent world system. Countless people will hate the New World Order and will die protesting against it. When we attempt to evaluate its promise, we have to bear in mind the distress of a generation or so of malcontents, many of them quite gallant and graceful-looking people.
Malcontents, that's a great word.
H.G. Wells, in his book entitled The New World Order.
Look at the date.
1939.
Now, H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds, very popular author. Even back then, 80, 90 years ago, people were starting to talk about it, obviously.
I personally was a fan of the New World Order when they were
wrestling New World Order?
WWF, man.
The Wolfpack?
Come on, bro. Got to get down with that.
Yeah, I thought it was already implemented in the WWF.
They're the leaders.
Well, they are sport entertainment. They are part of
they are the faces, not leaders. They're the face.
That's true.
All right. In order to achieve the final aim, which is one world and not two hostile worlds, such as a partial world government, must never act as an alliance against the rest of the world. The only real step toward world government is world government itself. Albert Einstein, Open Letter to the General Assembly of the United Nations, 1947.
Right after WWII.
Right. March 26th, 1967. Pope Paul VI writes, "Who can fail to see the need and importance of thus gradually coming to the establishment of a world authority capable of taking effective action on the judicial and political planes? Delegates to international organizations, public officials, gentlemen of the press, teachers and educators, all of you must realize you have your part to play in the construction of a new world order."
This is the frickin' Pope at that time.
He must have been a member of the Bilderberg Bohemian Grove Club.
He must
was
have.
his describing right there.
This was the Pope at the time.
Oh, I thought he was CEO of a news media outlet the way he was talking.
Pretty much.
Next one here. The developing coherence of Asian regional thinking is reflected in a disposition to consider problems and loyalties in regional terms, and to evolve regional approaches to development needs and to the evolution of a new world order. Our very own Richard Nixon.
Tricky dick. I'm not a squirrel.
Also in 1967. That must have been the year that they both went to the...
So think about it. Vietnam, French were fighting the Vietnamese for like a decade or so before that, 12 years, I believe. 1965, it was known that the first American soldiers went there, but 67 is really when it started to kick off. So once again, talk about the military-industrial complex.
We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order.
Who said that?
Dun, dun. David Rockefeller.
And what did we discuss last episode? David Rockefeller had a huge hand in creating Trilateral Commission. He and his family have been woven in and all throughout of these organizations.
Here we go. Let's even get closer to home.
So here's another. I'm just going to spoil. Here's another president. And this guy had a hard on for the NWO. I mean, raging like
He took some NWO Viagra.
Right.
If we do not follow the dictates of our inner moral compass and stand up for human life, then his lawlessness will threaten the peace and democracy of the emerging New World Order we now see. This long dreamed of vision we've all worked toward for so long. George Bush, 1991.
You know what I've noticed throughout the proclamation of the goals and who has said this? This establishment of the New World Order is not tied to a political party. This is a bilateral, across the aisle thing that they all agree on. And have you not been wondering why it's like no one right now from the Republican Party, which is the party of our president, seems to really be 100% on board with the idea of the greatness of America, the power of America, the superpower status of America, keeping it that way or making it that way, or the idea for us as citizens to strive to achieve that. It's like I am watching a lone wolf who is stating the goals of America and what America is and wants to be. And it is like not going to be possible to have a world level playing ground if the superpower still exists. And so I was wondering, why is there no one from the party that is openly, continually, consistently supporting the idea of the greatness of America? But these people that are talking about establishing a level playing ground, one government, one economy, you can't have a superpower in existence if you're trying to achieve that goal. And so,
or you could have one superpower. Right now, I would say there's 3 to 4 superpowers: America, China, India, so the Soviet Union, Russia. But you have to eliminate all those.
But the superpowers that you named outside of the United States are all on board.
Yes.
With the idea of allowing the unification of one government, one currency. The United States, as of right now, with the leader that is our spokesperson, is in total opposition. Not only like these gentlemen that you're referring to that have publicly come out and said that this is a great thing we've all been working towards, but this leader that we have now is in public outspokenness against this goal.
I'm glad you brought that up because we're going to get into that very soon. I want you to bring that back up. I have a quote from these leaders, and then I have a quote from that leader you're referring to.
Okay.
That's going to summarize everything.
Sorry to jump ahead, but it just popped into my head.
Well, this is why we paid for the ticket for you to fly out here.
And the cup of coffee.
And the cup of coffee.
Now we can see a new world coming into view, a world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order. In the words of Winston Churchill, a world order in which the principles of justice and fair play protect the weak against the strong. A world where the United Nations, freed from Cold War stalemate, is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders. A world in which freedom and respect for human rights find a home among all nations. And that was George H.W. Bush, March 6, 1991. Now, go ahead and who said this next quote? All right, so this is President Clinton, June 22nd, 1993. In case there's any doubt about whether President Clinton supports world government, on this date he signs a letter to the World Federalist Association congratulating Strobe Talbot on receiving the WFA's first Norman Cousins Global Governance Award. The WFA is a leading force for world federal government. Clinton's letter states, Norman Cousins worked for the world peace and world government. Strobe Talbot's lifetime achievement as a voice for global harmony have earned him this recognition. He will be worthy recipient of the Norman Cousins Global Governance Award. Best wishes for future success. Strobe Talbot is with the CFR. So once again, Bill Clinton talking about world government. Go ahead and skip down to the next one. And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build, ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign, Barack Hussein Obama. March 26, 2014. I'm going to read it one more time, folks, because you might have heard that and said, wait, what did you just say? And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build, ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign. So he's basically calling us a bunch of idiots, that we're too stupid to... I could care less if he calls me an idiot. What I'm pissed about is he's saying we got to give up our rights. Well, no, but he's saying people are too stupid to realize that. Read the next quote. This is important that we understand this gentleman's view on this. This is important. I would like to ask him about it. The affirmative task before us is to create a new world order. Presidential candidate, Joe Biden. So I'm going to read the next one. And this is going to go back to what Carl was talking a moment ago. This was a quote from July 21st, 2016, that President Donald John Trump, old 45, as I like to call him, Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. And as Carl was just mentioning a moment ago, look at the presidents: Nixon, Bush Sr., Clinton, Obama, then Biden. But Trump is the only one. Jason talks a lot about he didn't vote for Trump, he voted against Hillary. When Trump said this, I remember this very clearly. What that spoke to me is this is a man who understands what we are talking about. If you know anything about his father, he had ties to like the John Birch Society. Look that up. He has great understanding of what is happening on a global level. So when he said Americanism, not globalism,
will be our credo. He was saying that to these people in direct opposition to them, they're saying, I know what you are trying to do, and your plans under this administration are going to be thwarted. And he's trying to.
Yeah, he is. And this is where the fight's going to happen in this country. This is what we're going to fight for. We're going to fight to keep Americanism instead of being globalized.
More importantly than that, and this is where we're going to bring the spiritual aspect and the idea that when Trump says that, and if we look at the election right now, it isn't Trump. It isn't Harris. It's not going to be President Trump or President Harris. It's literally, are we going to remain a sovereign nation, one nation under God, or are we going to acquiesce and surrender to this global Luciferian crime syndicate and thus go the way of the dodo?
What I love, just going back and reading real quick, the quote from President George H.W. Bush, the principles of justice and fair play protect the weak against the strong. How much more horseshit could that be?
Well, did you see what he did there, though? He took the words of a man in Winston Churchill. I've studied. That man did that. That man almost put himself in bankruptcy because he tried to warn the world about Adolf Hitler long before Adolf Hitler came into power to do what he said he was going to do. He used to have speaking engagements where he was paid well. He used to go on campuses where he was paid well. He used to be a respected politician and leader, and because of his outspokenness against the Third Reich and the establishment of what Hitler was doing, and everyone was laughing at him and telling him you're crazy, he started to be frozen out of the circle that he was involved in. But do you know what he did? He stayed committed to his moral compass. It almost put him in bankruptcy. He almost became penniless. He was laughed at. He was ostracized. Nobody took him seriously, and he led us through that time. But I'm almost more angry about anything that we've covered up till now, that I see that George H. Bush stole the reputation of Winston Churchill and used his words in speech or talk. That is repulsive to me, because that is one of the most cynical, calculated, evil moves to take a person that was respected and revered and trusted and loved and adored and use the words that Winston Churchill spoke.
That's why I did it.
It's repulsive
trying to give himself credentials.
Yes, he piggybacked the sacrifices of that man. And for the people that are listening right now, and you don't know the sacrifices that Winston Churchill made to stay committed to do everything George H. Bush just said that he was going to do, and he used that man's legacy. That has me fired up. Like, that really pisses me off. I didn't even recognize that.
Well, what's interesting is that, talking about Churchill, it reminds me of at the end of The Dark Knight. He's not the hero we want, but he's the hero we need. Well, as you studied Churchill, like, to the Indians, he was the devil earlier in his life. But there's that maturing process, there's that growing process, but nonetheless, you're right. And that's why people can say what they want about Trump, but that single sentence, to me, speaks everything you need to know about him. Yeah, Americanism, not globalism, not Luciferianism, not the one world order, not this global crime syndicate that is now even in our major metropolises on our own soil, is going to be our credo. We are reverting back to our founding fathers. We are going back to the ideals of the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, is that idea. And that's why these people are fighting so hard against Trump. And look at the people, the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, all these villains.
Every other former president. That is what I just in the last few days heard. He is not endorsed with any other living former president.
Even Republican presidents.
Right.
You know a man by his enemies. You need to know where your line in the sand is. And I've decided, I purpose in my heart, I'm not standing with these globalist, Luciferian, pedophilic, evil group. I will not lock arms with those people. And if you want to, that's your deal. That's on you, but I would advise against it. But as we see, I hope we're roll out a convincing case on a pragmatic, physical realm. Then let's bring this into the spiritual.
Well, hold on. I got something to say too. Jeez.
You always do.
So what I'm trying to do is kind of put it all together and put it out there in layman's terms so that folks who listen and might understand differently or help them get an aha moment, or they could share this with folks to help get an aha moment. So when we look at everything we've talked about, and we look at these quotes that we just read, and we look at what's going on in America today with these protests, that the younger generation is really focused on the whole equality thing. When I say equality thing, I'm talking monetarily, that no one deserves to have more than someone else. They don't look at it as providing jobs or this or that. They just look at it as this person has more than anyone else, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be equal for everyone across the board, which is socialism, right? That's where the younger generation is. And when you go back to what we talked about in the last episode about how they've taken over the media and academia and all that, first they need to have the money and the power, and then they get into the academia and they get into all media, and this is what they show as a better way. And again, socialism,
a quote-unquote better way.
Right, quote-unquote, because, we don't want to look at the history of socialism, do we?
No.
Because the people that are pushing this, anytime you look at a socialistic government, this is why I brought up that quote, protect the weak from the strong. The only ones strong in a socialist government are the people at the very top.
Right.
The leaders. They have unlimited resources. They control everything and tell you what you can have and what you can do. And it may sound utopian, but it's never, ever worked.
It's such an insidious thing because socialism always devolves into communism, which is not that different from Marxism. And, the progenitor of Marxism, Karl Marx, who I really begin to look into this guy, he's just a blatant, straight out Satan lover.
You know what this kind of reminds me of?
So what I'm saying is that these people are flirting with evil. Like we always talk about,
right.
It's good and evil, it's light and dark. We're literally talking about the idea of embracing and welcoming evil. And you can come back to that idea of like a vampire, which I've been thinking about lately. A vampire can't come in to your house unless the head of the house invites him in. And Trump's like, no. And that's why we got to rally and support him. I mean, is he vulgar or whatever? Yeah, of course he is. But he's the only thing stopping them from getting to us.
Right. And if you look back in history, way back to the British Empire, as Great Britain was growing, the wealthy, powerful people, a lot of them were colonels and whatever in the army and all that sort of stuff, right? And what did they get for helping their world dominance?
Nobility.
And land.
Yeah.
And
titles,
money.
land, yeah.
Right? Now, what was going on with the rest of the people that lived under that? The normal people, the middle class, which they didn't have, by the way. They were taxed.
They became serfs.
They were taxed to the point where they couldn't afford to own anything themselves, and they were told what to do, when to do it, and if they didn't, they were punished for it. And this is what's going on. And that's what they tried to do. That's what Britain tried to do by themselves. Now we just got all these countries getting together and saying, hey, these super powerful people, just like it was just the super powerful people of Britain before, now the king, if you will, now we have these super powerful people getting together trying to do the same thing. Listen, the only folks that are going to be in control or have a say or be strong are going to be them. Everyone else is going to be a servant to them. I'm telling you. It always ends up that way. This is why we need history. It always ends up that way. And that's where we're headed.
Well, this is why we need a Second Amendment.
It's exactly why we need a Second Amendment. And that's why it's going to be very hard. And that's why the UN's here. That's why all of a sudden these governors and mayors and stuff have all this power. Give me a break. Give me a break. Since when is a governor of a state able to make whatever he says into freaking...
I always wondered how it was going to be possible for the whole world to accept the word of one organization or the government of one. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I sit around and my mind is weird. So I think, how is it going to happen that all across the world, all across dialects, that everyone would accept one creed, one government? And through this whole pandemic thing, I have watched every single country embrace the mandates of the WHO. And it's like a light went off in my head one day, and I'm like, I never thought that through health, the whole world would get on the same page and support the same thing and do the same thing. It's like the first time in history that every country, just about outside of Sweden, embraced the recommendations of one organization. And it really blew my mind when I saw that.
That's a great segue for us now bringing the spiritual element. And I'm saying this to Christians because I have these conversations a lot lately. People, the Antichrist or this or that, the beast, whatever, the devil's not going to come to you in his true self. Movies like The Devil's Advocate or, any movie where the devil is, it's always a beautiful woman or like a sharp-dressed man or object of your desire. So let's try to tie this into the spiritual aspect of the idea of the the whole world being tricked, deceived. I'm going to try to read this.
This is like literally the Wonder Woman movie. It's what it's all about. It's like during World War II, and the devil was one of the leaders everyone thought was the good guy, and here he was actually creating all the chaos.
The god at war.
So that he could use that as the distraction or the tool to take over. It's crazy.
I like Linda Carter better as Wonder Woman. Just wanted to get that out there. Revelation 13, 1-8 NIV. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns, 7 heads, and the 10 crowns on the horns, and each head a blasphemous word. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet of those of a bear and the mouth that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. This is important. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshiped the dragon because he had been given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it? Let me read that in the Amplified because it shows it out a little better. And the dragon, Satan, stood on the sandy shore of the sea. Then I saw a vicious beast coming out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, and on its horns were 10 royal crowns, and on his head were blasphemous names. And the beast that I saw resembled a leopard, and his feet resembled those of a bear, and the mouth was that of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of the heads which seemed to have a fatal wound, but his fatal wound had healed, and the entire earth followed after the beast in amazement. They fell down and worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. They worshiped the beast, saying, who is like as great as the beast, and who is able to wage war against him? So basically, let me just word it this way, and I want you to think about this. When Hitler was here, when Mussolini was in power, when Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, anyone in the last 100 years you can think of, did they do one miracle, sign, or wonder? One thing that would make the entire world amazed and full of wonder and awe.
They actually ruled with fear and dominated with fear and not wonder.
You talk about the beast, we talk about the dragon. We have a soon coming Antichrist who's going to be the head, if you will, of this, who is going to be able to call down fire, who is going to have appeared to be shot in the head. And there's a lot of eschatological meaning behind all this. We don't have time in this episode to get into it, but basically it's going to look like he got shot in the head and died and was resurrected like some other guy in history. I know we all like a whole bunch. And this is where it comes to be a very complex issue. And back to what you were talking about, Carl, the idea of how is this going to happen? And we talked a couple episodes ago with Stockholm Syndrome, and 2 Thessalonians talks about, and they will be given over to a great delusion. Devil's in the details, right? And once again, all the organizations we pulled out, all this information, I just literally Googled their websites and I got all this information from the about. I didn't do a lot of real in-depth research in gathering their about section. This is out there. This isn't something in the works. We're here, folks. Let me go another here. Revelation 13, 16, and 18. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the people who have insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of man, the number 666. The Amplified says, also he compels all, the small and great, the rich and poor, the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead, signifying allegiance to the beast, that no one will be able to buy, sell, or trade except those who have the mark, either the name of the beast, the number on his head. Here is wisdom. Let the person who has enough insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the imperfect number of man, and the number is 666. So what we're talking about, and you can already see this in China, they're already rolling this out. You know, Bill Gates has been talking about this. You're not going to be able to go anywhere unless you have this vaccine. Folks, we're here. We've already established on a logistical and a pragmatic level that global government is here. And it's not only is it in places like Washington, D.C. or England, or it's in our major metropolises through the Strong City Initiative.
I think if they truly try to to make everyone vaccinate, it might be that line in the sand for a lot of people.
Well, here's the ruse. A lot of people are in a fever pitch right now. People aren't using their logical mind. It's all emotional, and they're going to take this damn thing.
Now,
because
I think there's a lot less of those people than. I'm not saying there's not a lot of them. Okay,
Right.
All I'm saying is I don't want to say who they are, but let's just say people I know. We got into a discussion, and these people I know that I have not had this discussion with, like really haven't gotten into this kind of stuff with, they brought up the whole vaccination. They brought up the COVID testing, and these people with kids and everything, they're like, dude, we're not getting any testing or any vaccines, and my kids aren't getting testing of vaccines. And these weren't people that I really thought were on board with that, because in the beginning of it, these folks were actually very afraid, very scared. But luckily, I think there's enough folks out there who are willing to get in the arena to share what's really going on, and I believe it's getting out there. I believe people. I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of people who are definitely still in fear mode, but I'm telling you, I do estimates, so I'm dealing with people right at their homes on a pretty regular basis, dozen different families a week just for that, and I don't see the fear that the media is trying to portray. I know it's out there for sure, but there's a lot of people who don't buy in this, and if they force vaccinations, I'm telling you, this is going to be that line in the sand you're talking about for a lot of people. But that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
But let me ask this. This is these hard questions we have to ask ourselves these days. If it comes down to your kids starving, are you taking that? What are you doing? I'm not posing that maybe for you guys per se, but I'm posing that for the people that are listening.
Right.
Because I have an advantage in that respect that I don't have any offspring that I know of. I don't have any children. Daddy. Right. I don't have any kids, so I don't have to necessarily worry about that. I got to worry about myself. But having somebody who's a parent or having somebody who, takes care of people, whatever, because it says right here in the scripture, and we already see this, this is a reality. And this is being perpetrated by the uns, the who's, the NATO's, this and this. What do you do? Like Dennis Hopper and Speed. What do you do?
So this is what you do. What you do is you don't do it by yourself. You find those people that have the same beliefs as you, and just like we did in the 1700s, and we say enough is enough. Enough is enough. And we fight back as a group, not individuals. I'm just saying.
Well
that's
said.
what we're doing right now. We're trying to get people together to realize that,
Well, we're at the
and like
initial.
you were talking about Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Right? And how everyone just laughed.
Yes, they did.
Well, look at history, folks. Good, I didn't cut you off.
There's obviously a worldwide orchestrated effort to distance you. And I'm a firm believer that more so than thinking that a virus at 6 foot is less effective than it is at 6 foot 2 inches, is that the distancing is the beginning of the idea of being isolated and being separated and being alone. And so as you're talking about uniting together, the government already is making it more complicated for you to be together with your family. And someone could say, well, that is not their intended implementation. And my position is I don't even care what the intention is. I care what the result is.
That's right.
So I am a very hard person to win a debate with. And the reason is because of being trained on how to do that. My general overall personality never gets caught in a web. And so I understand the structure of a web. And any spider web, no matter how integral you see it, only has 4 main supports. That's it. You can get the biggest spider web ever recorded in the history of spider webs, and no matter how big it is, it always has 4 main supports. And that's it. And when you get 2 destroyed, the web blows in the wind until eventually that 3rd web breaks. When the 3rd web breaks, the 4th web in reality doesn't exist. It's not even there anymore. So I am not concerned with intent. And that is someone who really can't be painted in a corner, because I will always give the person that I am in a debate with the ability to argue intent. I don't care about intent. I am a bottom line guy. I am a result driven guy.
Results matter.
Yes. I am a lowest common denominator guy. And so in the end, my position is not the intention, but the result. And right now, people are being herded into isolation. They are being mentally prepared and trained into isolation to not unite in any way with anyone in any environment. And that is dangerous.
Well, even social distancing, it's an oxymoron. The two words, they are not compatible in definition. Quarantine. You don't quarantine healthy people. You quarantine those that are ill.
Like I read.
And that's why lockdown martial law, to me, is a far more compatible word with you're actually talking about. But we're talking about on a global scale.
Well, this virus is whatever. I mean, it's so dangerous that the cure for it is, if you think you have it, is to stay at home for 14 days and it'll go away.
You know what's funny?
What the hell are you talking about?
No one denies that there is a such thing as a coronavirus. Only a moron would. But, like you said, study history. Go back to the Incas and the Aztecs. Go back to the days where hieroglyphs were what you communicated with or writing on a rock, and study the history of civilization. And it's not this virus. It is the response to this virus that in the history of human recorded civilization, as far as you go back, okay, no response to a pandemic has ever been done the way you described, by quarantining the healthy. It has never been done in the history of the world. And you say that to people and they look dumbfounded like, oh, really? You're serious? And to me, I can't deal with two things. These are the only two things I can't deal with. Okay, you wanted a fired up Carl, you got it.
Good.
Number one, don't lie to me. You lie to me and you're out of my life. I can deal with anything you say, but it's got to be true. And the second thing that I really struggle with is stupidity. I am a very, working in the area of showing patience to stupidity. It bothers me, and it's something that I struggle with. And I am wondering why there are not more people questioning why, not the virus, but the response that has been taken by the world, okay? Why now? Why are we taking the healthy and putting them away instead of the most vulnerable or the immune compromised? Why is it? No one cares. It's no one cares. That bothers me because you know why? That's not dishonesty, which bothers me. It's stupidity.
I think some of it's fear. They're afraid of what would happen if they disobey. I'm just saying. But going back, Carl, to what you were saying about teaching basically isolation, I don't know if you guys know this, but I've got 5 kids in school. I know at least 2 of them. I don't know how it works for everyone, but I know at least 2 of them have to carry this plastic thing around. And when they get to their desk, it opens up and it's a clear plastic box. Put a perimeter around them at their desk. You know what I'm saying? You know those big styrofoam things, poster board things you fold out? It's like one of those, but it's clear.
How big is it?
3 feet tall.
So the virus
then it fits.
The virus's capability ends at 3 feet.
All I know is,
according to the professionals,
this is how it works: is they're allowed to take their masks off once they have that perimeter up.
I've not heard that. That's the first time.
It's like,
I didn't even know what these were. I saw them sitting on a counter because I don't really get involved in ordering school supplies or any of that kind of stuff. And the school gave them to them. We didn't have to order them. But I didn't even know what they were. And then the kids were talking about their shield or whatever. I go and I looked at and I picked it up and I go, "You put this on your desk? You have to carry this around all day?" They're like, "Yeah." Their names are on them. I was like, "Holy!" I literally just found this information out this week. I'm trying to picture this classroom and everyone's got a clear wall in front of them.
That's sad. It really is. It breaks my heart for the children that are being raised like that.
You want to hear something sadder? Not to one up you. Every morning I let my dog take me for a walk. I normally have music. And that's why I pray. And if I don't have that time and I don't have my coffee afterwards, my day's not good. This is kind of a divergent. I think it falls in line with what you're talking about: mass confusion, the historical level of deception that we're encountering right now. I live in a neighborhood and there's white folk, black folk, and when my dog takes me on a walk the other day, I saw a house, and every time I've gone by this house in the past, they must like the Brady Bunch. I got like 18 kids. And I was walking by the other morning and, the kids got the big chalks and they chalk on the ground. And I saw love and a heart and a sun and I love you, daddy, and, stuff like this. And then right in the middle, I saw BLM.
In the same handwriting as the sunshine?
Yes. I honestly got a little teary because, it's not, if you know anything about Black Lives Matter and the people and we had this conversation this week, Carl, the people that had it's just evil. It's an evil organization. And they are, I believe, part of this globalist Luciferian thing that we're discussing. And it's just so sad that we're seeing the absolute corruption and pervasive robbing of innocence at the lowest level of our society. I'm not meaning low like a horrible person, just from the youngest to the the oldest. You ask me, or you say, how is it going to be that there's going to be different creeds and different nations and beliefs going to buy into this? It's happening. And it's happening through the manipulation, through the tug of your heartstring, the tug of your purse strings. And I'm sorry, but where we're at right now, and this is something that we always talk about, get in the arena. This can all be easily stopped. This can all be easily turned around if collectively we could just say, no, this is not right. But, and I've said this before, and you guys have heard me, really lost my faith in humanity to do the right thing.
See, I haven't.
And I know you have.
And this is why, though, man. And this is what you got to remember. I know that there were people in the 1700s that said exactly what you're saying, okay? And it was the 3%ers, right? I hear what you're saying. We're not going to get everyone to say stop. And that's why it's not going to stop easily. That's why there has to be a fight. I'm sorry. I'm not saying we should. I'm saying it's what it's going to take. I mean, it's very clear. It's very clear. And it's just what happens. What is the spark, the line, if you will, that folks like us who don't believe in this, who don't want their rights taken away, who don't want to be socialists, who love the country that they were born in or became a citizen in, and, you know, want to preserve that way of life. There's going to be a group that's going to say, listen, that shit ain't happening. It stops now.
Well, being an American citizen, more succinctly, is a unique experience that throughout world history, like you're talking about, Carl, has never existed. And it is a wonderful blessing. It is something divinely inspired by the hand of providence on our founding fathers, through our founding fathers. And I believe that is something worth preserving.
Heck yeah, it is.
And you can look, we've talked about so many different scenarios in history just within the last 100 years where there's been horrible, horrific acts of violence and manipulation and corruption. And America's not perfect, but America was great in the regard of the most level playing field in history is the American experience. And that's something worth preserving. But once again, I believe that that's something worth preserving because God's providence, God's unique hand stamp is upon that. And when we just tie these two episodes together, let's just kind of bring this in. We're at this point now where it's not Trump. It's not Trump versus Harris battle. It's not a Trump versus Harris election, or Biden. He's out of it. He's even admitted, but it's light versus dark. It's good versus evil.
100%.
Like Trump said, Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. And if we can stave that off, if we can direct the ship, maybe there's a hope. I don't know. But I don't think Trump's going to win. I believe he has the numbers, but I believe the corruption of the Democratic Party with the backing of Soros, the WHO, all these, the INF, the SK, all these different things, the fight is fixed, I'll say. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope I can come back to you guys and say I was wrong.
Oh, we've covered a lot politically, but in the final, spiritually, is that speaking directly to your view of humanity right now, all throughout Christian history, as recorded in God's Word, He has always had a standard. He has always had a man. He has always had a man involved in His plan to set a standard against the kingdom of hell. And right now, I believe this. If God was able to use a jackass to speak to Balaam and talk to him about the spiritual world that Balaam wasn't looking at, and when the jackass spoke to Balaam, all of a sudden the eyes of Balaam became open and he saw the huge angelic being in front of the jackass, which was why the donkey quit walking and turned around and said, hey, you can quit beating me now any second because your eyes need to be open. So I believe that if God was able to use a donkey, that God can use anything. And speaking directly, not just to you, but to anyone listening on this podcast, to anyone that is going to talk to anyone else about this topic, I would give a word of encouragement that says God has His men and God has His women, and He's placed them right where they need to be for right now. And I know you know this, and I believe you are one of them. And I believe that if we will become time redeemers, as we're told to do, the days are evil, so we must redeem the time. Redeeming the time is making use of every opportunity. That is the most simple definition of what a time redeemer is. Redeeming time, buying back time. I studied that. It simply means that you make the most of every opportunity that presents itself and be faithful to that moment. If the people that are listening now will, and we will, continue to be faithful for the moment as it presents ourselves, and don't worry about the results of what we're doing, but be worried about our faithfulness, to God and be worried about our credo of our commitment to him. And that is all we're concerned with, right? And we do not become upset, depressed, downhearted because people aren't responding. Our goal is at the end, when we stand before God, that we hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter into your rest. We're not responsible for the results. We're responsible for our faithfulness. And as you said, I believe what you said. I believe that whatever is going to present itself to people is going to be that moment where if they do the right thing, they will become redeemers of time or time redeemers. And that is the spiritual conclusion from my position and weak insight. Okay. Very feeble attempt to say anyone that has listened to these two podcasts, my conclusion is be encouraged, be of good cheer, be emboldened, be empowered, and be free. Be spiritually fed to know that God has always had a man and a woman to set a standard for such a time as this. And with that, I do a goodbye.
Good day. I got nothing. I think that's perfect.
Great ending. Well said, Carl.
Carl, thank you for coming. You have an open invitation anytime you like.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the people that are listening that stayed to the end. I appreciate that. I truly do. And in closing, I'd like to thank my good friend Jason for the cup of coffee.
Booyah. You're welcome, Carl.
All right. And Johnny, hope the aliens were not too harsh on you.
I hope you're out actually just doing research.
Yeah. Well,
in the field, undercover. I don't know.
I hope he's not having research done on him.
Right. That's what,
gonna come up with like missing a kidney or anyway, thank you guys once again. Carl, thanks for coming. Carl Tuckerson, ladies and gentlemen, please share if you guys have any question, comments, concerns. info@flawedinc.com. Our website's flawedinc.com. Currently we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Parler, Gab, Flawed Inc, Flawed Inc CLE. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, as we are currently there as of the moment. Flawed Inc, Flawedcast CLE. Listen, get in the arena. I want to thank you guys for listening. Please share. And with that,
your sympathy.